different forms of how abusive parents parent. But then one key thing is that during the relationship, the abuser may mistreat, neglect, or upset the children to hurt the victim. Ask a child to spy on the victim, leave the family without money, food, or shelter, call the child protection authorities to make false allegations against the victim, or even deliberately endanger, threaten to harm the children, or even kidnap or kill a child. The other bit which I think we really need to look at is how domestic abuse affects the children. This is really key, and most times it does not appear as though this is looked at, but it affects children because usually they might be watching, hearing, or knowing their parent is being abused may threaten children's sense of stability and security. So, for example, children may have emotional and behavioral difficulties, and this is where their mental well-being is also being affected just by by witnessing this abuse. If you remember when we're defining post-traumatic stress disorder, we did talk about the sufferer having witnessed some sort of traumatic event, and this surely is what's happening to these children when they witness this kind of thing. Children may have flashbacks, nightmares, and constant or extreme worry about possible danger. Again, that's one of the signs of post-traumatic stress disorder. Children living with domestic abuse are at higher risk of experiencing physical injury or physical and emotional abuse. So you can see, before I even carry on, that it is like the list is just kind of going on, and now you can see this cycle being created. So it will go from the beginning of the cycle all the way round back, to complete the cycle, in which case children who grew up in abusive relationships may end up also being perpetrators as a result. Children, because they may copy what they learn at home, you see, so they may use violence and threat to get what they want. They may learn that people do not get in trouble when they hurt others, because the abuser is getting away with hurting the other parent. Children who are exposed to violence may be desensitized to aggressive behavior. So they welcome it, they don't see anything wrong in it. And then when this occurs, young people see aggression as normal and are less concerned about it. Now, you can begin to see, if you remember, back in the days, there was this song that used to be sung then. They say, parents, listen to your children. We are the leaders of tomorrow. So imagine if the leaders of tomorrow are going through this kind of thing, become desensitized to aggression and all of that, you can begin to see what kind of society we are building as a result of this situation. Now, I'd like to go into the examples of the different forms of abuses that we highlighted in our previous, in the maiden show. Number one was physical abuse. And physical abuse can include being kicked, punched, pinched, slapped, choked, and beaten. Use of threats or use of weapons, including knives and irons, being scalded or poisoned, objects being thrown around, violence against family members or pets, Another example, number two is isolation, the bit of isolation, where you can see that where someone is being limited, from outside involvement, such as family, friends, and work colleagues, not allowing any activity outside the home that does not include the perpetrator, and then constant checking up on their whereabouts, so maybe even checking their phones, or who did you call, who are you talking to, why are you staying so long on phone, and all of that stuff. There is verbal abuse. An example of verbal abuse would be constant yelling and shouting, verbal humiliation, either in private or in company, constantly being laughed at and being made fun of, blaming you for their own failures. There's threatening behavior, examples of which would be the threat of violence, the threat of use of weapons, including knives and irons, the threat of use of violence against family members or pets, threatening to use extended family members to attack, the victim, destroying the victim's personal items or even their own personal items to give the impression that if he can destroy his property, I wonder what's going to do to me or to my property. Threatening to tell the police or authorities that, the victim is committing domestic abuse. You see, so the perpetrator in this case is threatening the victim that I'll report you to the authorities that you are committing, an offense, for example. And then threatening to remove the children from the victim. That can be really, really devastating for the victim, particularly if it's a woman that is suffering this abuse. Now, there is this bit which is really interesting and really key. That's the part of the emotional and psychological abuse. It's not like all the other ones are not key, but by the time I give you the examples of this, you can begin to see how it ties into all of the other ones that make it really key. Now, examples of this would be intimidation, withholding affection, turning children and friends against the victim, being stopped from seeing friends and relatives, constantly being insulted, including in front of others, repeatedly being belittled, keeping the victim awake or stopping the victim from sleeping, excessive contact, for example, stalking, and that's a different ballgame entirely. For those of you who might be wondering, stalking is where you trail people. You trail a person to try and everywhere they go, wherever they go, whatever they do, you are monitoring them and following them about to see what they are doing, when they are doing it, and with who they are doing it. It can be nerve-wracking. Also, there is the use of social media sites to intimidate the victim, such as Facebook and Twitter. Willfully stopping for men who are suffering this is women doing this now, willfully stopping fathers from seeing their children, for example, by breaking court orders or throwing tantrums or doing something to ensure that that situation does not take place. Also, persuading. There is a term for this actually. It's called gaslighting. We will discuss that concept separately later in the show. The other bit is power and control. That's number 6. We got power and control. Abusers believe that they have a right to control their partners by telling them what to do and expecting obedience. So it's like a master-servant kind of arrangement. Telling the victim they will never see their children again if they leave, or using force to maintain power and control, not accepting responsibility for the abuse. It's not my fault, it's all your fault. Continuing, if you like, continual purposeful breach of family court orders where the courts are involved and there are orders. And even forced marriage comes under this heading because it's part of power and control. And hence the name forced marriage. Obviously, the person being forced into the marriage did not consent to that marriage. At this point, we'll take a breather to allow those 6 examples set in. I will be playing War Within, a song dedicated to sufferers of PTSD. This song was subsequently recorded by an American country singer by the name Howard Salmon. The man himself served as a soldier and is an absolute gentleman who is keen to help those affected by this horrific illness. The song is currently listed on iTunes, Spotify, and all the rest of them. And some of the proceeds from the sale of the CD downloads will go to a charity which helps soldiers suffering from PTSD. So I would love you to get behind a very worthy cause. The song I'm playing now is the acoustic version, but the copyright belongs to Tom Bine. So when we return, we will run through the next 6 examples. Stay tuned and enjoy the song.
You made it home alive and well, the perfect soldier now it seems. Oh, and you could be forgiven if you thought it all a dream. Your friends and family are there to welcome you back home. And with the ones you love close by your side, you're home where you belong. And so you look to find that switch, try to erase what you've seen. But your mind still races unaware to the places you've been. And although you know that danger's many thousand miles away, your body starts to feel this fear inside. It's growing stronger day by day. 'Cause me, I'm fighting my own war, and it's raging deep inside of me. One no one else has ever heard of, one no one else will ever see. It's from a fear I've never known, and each day I face it on my own. Conflict inside, I feel that I may never win. When attack comes from a memory within.
Welcome back to Stricken. I am Ahmed Balaji, your host. Before the break, we were discussing examples of different types of abuse. This is what the Yorubas call Oropo, Nenu Yekobo. If you don't understand Yoruba, find a friend that understands to tell you what that means. Anyway, we will proceed now with other known examples. Number 7 is financial abuse. Yeah, financial abuse, that one. Examples are totally controlling the family's income, not allowing the victim to spend any money unless permitted, making the victim account for every penny they spend, running up huge bills such as credit cards, store cards in the victim's name, including without the knowledge of the victim, purposely defaulting on payments, setting up false companies, accounts, or credit cards in the name of the victim, just to get the victim, into trouble, deliberately forcing the victim to go back to the family court as a means of costing them additional legal fees. So for those people who engage in endless legal battles simply because they want to spite the other person, this is essentially what you're doing. Now, number 8, sexual abuse. Examples of sexual abuse. You've got sexual harassment or pressure, maybe even and pressure, sexual harassment and pressure. Forcing sex after physical assault. We all know what that is. Sexually degrading language, raping someone, forcing someone to have sex or commit a sexual act against their will. Now, like we said before, against their will would be whether where they cannot legally consent to it, whether because of their disability, their mental impairment, or whatever else. It will be against their will. And if for some reason it was obtained by duress or by undue influence, where the perpetrator is the more powerful person, it will be deemed that it's against the victim's will. Consent has got to be free and willing. It can't be obtained any other way. Now, number 9, false allegations. That ties into most of the other bits that we talked about earlier. Telling authorities that somebody is